And here we go. A Fox News alert. The Supreme Court giving a major boost to President Trump's border agenda, clearing the way for deportation flights to resume using the Alien and Enemies Act after an Obama-appointed judge tried to block it. Let's bring in the Attorney General for the United States, Pam Bondi. Madam Attorney General, thank you so much for joining the program.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a great day for America, and it's a great day to be a Florida Gator.
Well, yes, it is. More news on that later, Madam Attorney General. But let's talk about what the court did. Essentially, they didn't rule when it comes to the Aliens and Enemy Act. What they said was this was the wrong venue, that the D.C. Circuit Court had no jurisdiction over that. But they also said, listen, if there's due process, then they have to do it through the normal channels, through a habeas writ. So what is the administration reaction to all that the Supreme Court just said yesterday?
Well, Lawrence, this is a landmark victory for the rule of law. And this is what we've been arguing on behalf of President Trump from day one. These are enemies of our state, of our country, and they should be deported. And what the judge ruled was going forward, from this day forward, all those planes that are gone are there. Those people are staying. So there are a lot of reasons why Americans are safer. From this point forward, the hearing will be held, it's a habeas hearing, in the court of confinement, which means in Texas.
Yeah.
So it will be a much faster hearing. They can't do class actions. It will be a much smoother, simpler hearing, and these people will be deported. Americans are safer, and domestic terrorists, foreign terrorists, you better look out because we're coming after you. I'd start self-deporting if I were you, because we're going to find you.
So, Madam Attorney General, let's get this on record because I think it's important for the audience to understand. Going forward, there's no shopping as it relates to immigration anymore. If someone is detained and scheduled for a deportation, they can no longer shop across the country for a judge, a liberal leading judge. And now all the cases going forward have to go to that Texas judge. Is that correct?
Correct, Lawrence, and that's what was happening. These liberal district judges thought that they could control our entire country's policy, Donald Trump's policy, on keeping America safe. They cannot do it, and this was, again, a landmark ruling for the rule of law yesterday, and it's so important because these flights will now continue. These terrorists, they are foreign terrorists, they are alien enemies to our country, and we will continue to deport them. We are going to keep America safe, and a liberal district judge is not going to stop us, and that's what the Supreme Court ruled yesterday.
So, Madam Attorney General, let's talk about the judge in D.C., Boasberg. There's a hearing scheduled today. Will that happen? I mean, this is essentially over. Will he still try to use some type of power that he has?
There is a hearing scheduled today at 3 p.m. He is not canceling the hearing. He is continuing on with the hearing, but the Supreme Court has spoken loud and clear. He has no jurisdiction. That flight will remain in El Salvador. Those inmates, those violent gang members, those violent alien enemies will remain in El Salvador. He cannot get them back, so his jurisdiction is over. So we'll see what he says today at 3 p.m., but going forward, these terrorists better look out.
Let's talk about this DOJ attorney that you have since put on leave. As I was reviewing the case, I found a lot of the action skeptical, interesting. It seemed like this attorney was arguing for the other side and not for the United States at that moment. At what point did you make the decision to pull him off the case?
Well, we represent the United States of America. That's our client. That's our only client and all the agencies that fall under the federal government. And any lawyer has an ethical duty to argue on behalf of their client, not against their client. And that's what happened in this case. He has been placed on administrative leave, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it was the right decision. You're exactly right.
There have to be consequences for your actions. There will be consequences for your actions. You have to ethically argue on behalf of your client, and that wasn't happening in this case.
That's exactly right. So, Madam Attorney General, it looks like Maine is upset, the state of Maine. The president made it very clear that No more men in women's sports. Not going to happen. As a result of that, he took a lot of the funding away since they didn't want to comply. They have since decided that they're going to sue the United States government. You're going to be representing the government. What can you tell us?
Well, we were right to do that. President Trump has the right to determine where the money goes, where federal money goes. And also, Lawrence, on Friday, we got a great win, too, with the Department of Justice. The Supreme Court ruled in our favor on DEI and where this money can go with the Department of Education. So that falls for every agency. We can determine where that money goes, all federal money. Now, back to Maine. Yeah, what's happening there is they're not abiding by what President Trump said. They're allowing men and women's sports. And in the case right now, what we did last night, some breaking news, we pulled all non-essential funding from the Department of Corrections in Maine because they were allowing a man in a woman's prison, a giant 6'1", 245-pound guy who committed a double murder with a knife, stabbed his parents to death and the family dog, and he identified as a woman. So they were letting him be housed in a female prison. No longer. We will pull your funding. We will protect women in prison. We will protect women in sports. We will protect women throughout this country. No more of that.
It's unbelievable that we're still dealing with this issue. It seems like the American people have spoken on this issue, but the resistance campaign continues. Madam Attorney General, thank you so much for joining Fox and Friends this morning.
Thank you. Have a great day.
To a Fox News alert now, the Trump administration celebrating a big Supreme Court win, allowing them to resume deportation flights under the Alien Enemies Act.
Madeline Rivera joins us now with more. And Maddie, it all comes down to the Supreme Court said, what are you doing? You filed this in the wrong state.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court's ruling here was pretty narrow, but nevertheless, both sides are claiming victory to some extent after the High Court's 5-4 ruling on Monday. I want you to take a listen to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Today is a bad day to be a terrorist in the United States of America. Today, the Supreme Court came out with a decision that reaffirmed President Trump was correct in using his authority on using the Alien Enemies Act to deport terrorists out of this country.
Attorney General Pam Bondi saying tonight's decision is a landmark victory for the rule of law. An activist judge in Washington, D.C. does not have the jurisdiction to seize control of President Trump's authority to conduct foreign policy and keep the American people safe. But the Supreme Court did not decide whether the administration's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act was constitutional. It ruled that the challengers brought their lawsuit to the wrong court. They should have filed it in a Texas federal court where the detentions took place and not in a D.C. federal court. The justices also agree that detainees must have the chance to challenge their removals, and the ACLU is taking that as a victory. Federal Judge James Boasberg, who had initially blocked the Trump administration from continuing those deportation flights under the Alien Enemies Act, is holding a hearing today. He will likely take the Supreme Court's decision into account. Also on Monday, Chief Justice John Roberts temporarily paused a midnight deadline for the Trump administration to return a Maryland resident, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, you see him there on your screen, back to the United States. Roberts' order will give the full court more time to consider the case. Although the government says Garcia's deportation was an administrative error, Bondi says ICE members have testified he's an MS-13 gang member. Garcia's lawyers argue, though, he's not been charged with any crime in any country. Steve Ainsley and Brian.
All right, Madeline, thank you very much. Let's bring in Lawrence Jones. He's live in El Paso. You saw him a moment ago where they were training the dogs. Lawrence, what's interesting about the finding yesterday from the Supreme Court, the ruling, the decision, is that the administration can continue to deport people under the Aliens and Enemies Act, but before they deport them, they got to say, okay, you're being deported under this act, and then they're going to get some due process. So they can continue, but there's going to be a pause where lawyers get involved.
Yeah, so a couple of things from this. First of all, the D.C. chief judge should have made this decision to begin with. This shouldn't have never made it to the Supreme Court because he knew that he didn't have jurisdiction over it. You have someone that has been held in Texas, and then you have a D.C. circuit judge that is overseeing it. That should have never happened. So what the Supreme Court said, this was an improper venue. And anytime someone is held, whether it's an immigration case or any other federal crime, it has to happen wherever they're held at. And so they sent it right back to Texas. The second part, which is what you were alluding to, was the due process. What they're saying is that you have to file a habeas petition. They're not disputing the flights yet. None of that is happening. But this is not exclusive to immigration. If you have any issue with detainment and your lawyer wants to pose some type of legal order, you got to file a habeas petition in the area where you're being held and let that judge handle it. I think it was a great win for the administration, but it also was a great day for the rule of law. Right. No more venue shopping when it comes to immigration.
Yeah, and you had that judge that was saying you need to bring that MS-13, alleged MS-13 gang member back home. He's in El Salvador in that maximum prison. You need to bring him home by midnight on Monday. And you had Chief Justice John Roberts say, no, we're going to pause that while we investigate. Let me see if this guy really is MS-13, what he's done. So that's just paused for now. But that's another win for Donald Trump.
I just worry about the already overburdened court system. I wish there was an intermediate way, like a special judge to get a hearing, because now we got to get him a lawyer. Exactly. We got to hold him up. We got to feed him. There's going to be, who knows, can they appeal?
And how long is it going to take for them to go through the courts?
Right. So it would eliminate all controversy. So anybody on that plane would get all the way, you'd get the due process that all of us would get, which I just don't know if they're worthy of it. I'm wondering if there was some type of military expeditious way to do it.
Well, you got to wonder, because it's based on the President of the United States has said, I'm going to deport them because they're members of the gang. I would imagine it would be it would go really fast if the federal government just said, okay, here's our proof that the guy's in a gang. Ultimately, that's what you want to know, because the Garcia guy, who we were talking about, who's stuck in legal limbo, his lawyers say he was never in a gang. As Maddie just said, he was never charged. So if as quickly as the government can say, look, this is a TDA guy, this is an MS-13 guy, boom, they had their day in court.
But the problem is then the TDA guy has Matlock as a lawyer. It's the wrong guy, wrong neck tattoo.
That's what the Supreme Court says you've got to get. I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.